Okay. Tankie Times, August 4th, 2026. Kon Fasoi and Tadpha Suam open to visitors in Laos. Lovely. In this issue, Yemen hits Saudi Arabia. Russian SMO updates. Ukrainian anti-fascists hunger strike. Laos, Cuba, Vietnam, China, and DPRK news. Lebanon's direct talks with Israel have yielded nothing but shame. The Secretary General of the Hezbollah resistance movement has categorically rejected the Lebanese government's direct negotiations with Israel, emphasizing that the talks have yielded nothing but shame, humiliation, as well as bitter disappointment for Lebanon, marked by a series of substantial concessions. Sheikh Naim Qassem made the remarks in a televised speech broadcast on the occasion of Arba'in, the 40th day after the martyrdom anniversary of Imam Hussein, AS, the third Shia Imam, from the city of Baalbek, southern Lebanon, on Tuesday. Press TV. Israeli forces raid multiple West Bank areas. Israeli forces have carried out raids and abductions across several areas of the West Bank, while illegal Israeli settlers separately attacked Palestinian communities south of Nablus on the northern side of the occupied territory. On Tuesday, the forces raided residential areas, searched Palestinian homes, and used live fire, stun grenades, and tear gas during operations in several West Bank areas, according to the Palestinian Shahab news agencies. Press TV. Yemeni forces strike vital target inside Saudi Najran airport. The Yemeni armed forces have struck a strategic installation inside Najran Regional Airport in southern Saudi Arabia in response to the Riyadh regime's ongoing aggression and blockade against their homeland. Brigadier General Yahya Sari, spokesperson for the Yemen's armed forces, said on Tuesday afternoon that Yemeni military units targeted the vital target with a domestically developed kamikaze drone. Sari noted that the retaliatory strike attained its objectives successfully. He emphasized the attack was a retaliation for Saudi Arabia's violation of Yemeni airspace over the northern provinces of Sada and Hajjah with unmanned aerial vehicles. On July 20, the Sana'a government declared a maritime blockade against Saudi Arabia, stating that its authorities have enforced an unjust and oppressive siege on Yemen for almost 12 years, looting our resources and enforcing a total blockade. Since then, the Yemeni armed forces said they have launched attacks on Saudi vessels in the Red Sea. Saudi Arabia and its Arab allies launched the blockade on Yemen as part of a full-scale war since March 2015, with military, political, and logistical support from the United States and other Western states. Press TV. Russian troops strike auto equipment plant, military cargo ships, port terminal in Ukraine. Russian troops continued delivering strikes on Black Sea ports used by the Ukrainian army and ships with military cargo, Russia's defense ministry reported. In addition, Russian forces struck a logistics center in the Sumy region used by the Ukrainian army. TASS has gathered key facts about the strikes. Russian Defense Ministry statements. Russian troops delivered strikes by Garin 4 Seeker kamikaze drones on 7 dry cargo ships delivering cargo for the Ukrainian army. The vessels delivering military cargo were struck at the Nikolaev port and in transit by sea in the Black Sea operational area. Garin drones also hit a logistics center used by the Ukrainian army near the settlement of Birin in the Sumy region. Russia's strikes, delivered by ground-based precision-guided weapons and UAVs on the evening of August 3rd, hit the Chemonorsk automotive equipment plant and a port terminal at the Chernomorsk port in the Odessa region. The Ukrainian army used these facilities to repair military auto equipment and store ammunition, fuel, and lubricants. In addition, the Russian armed forces hit 4 dry cargo ships with cargo for the Ukrainian army. As the ministry specified, the strikes targeted a dry cargo ship with military cargo at the Nikolaev port and a dry cargo ship unloading military cargo at the Yuzhny port. In addition, Russian troops struck 2 dry cargo ships in transit by sea south of Odessa, delivering armaments and military equipment to Ukrainian ports. TASS's estimates. Throughout July, Russian troops struck over 80 sea vessels at Ukrainian ports and in the Black Sea, including dry cargo ships, ferries, and bulkers used in the interests of the Ukrainian army, as follows from the estimates by TASS, based on the Russian Defense Ministry data. Situation in Ukraine. A series of blasts went off in Sumy in northern Ukraine. The Hromadske news media outlet reported. An aerial raid alert was declared in the Sumy region. A large-scale emergency power outage occurred in some parts of Sumy. The local power utility Sumyon-Blernergo reported later. Residents of the Dnipropetrovsk, Nikolaev, Sumy, Kharkov, and Chernigov regions of Ukraine were left without electricity after power facilities sustained damage, the country's energy ministry reported. TASS. What the fuck is that? What am I looking at? Oh my god. International one day hunger strike in solidarity with political prisoners in Ukraine. Venetia colony. Fascist Ukraine versus anti-fascist Ukraine. On August 5th, some 92 anti-fascist political prisoners incarcerated in Ukraine will go on a hunger strike to denounce the brutal conditions of their imprisonment and their torture they are suffering. Oh, are these the communists? Well, the alternative press has published articles on the fascist nature of the Ukrainian regime established through a coup d'etat in 2014, the Euromaidan, which elevated Nazi organizations to leadership of the state, particularly to control the repressive forces. Much less is known about the persecution unleashed against those who have the courage to oppose them. Yeah, it is. Okay. In 2015, the 3 existing communist parties were banned, and another 11 were outlawed in 2022, accused of being pro-Russian. Oh my god. General information on political prisoners in Ukraine. Political prisoners in Ukraine live under particularly harsh conditions, often far worse than those of people convicted of murder, rape, and other serious crimes. There are currently more than 50,000 classic political prisoners, people imprisoned for their political views, their anti-war stance, or their anti-fascist activities. In addition, 150,000 people are being prosecuted for desertion, evasion of mandatory military service, refusal to participate in the war, etc. The total number of people under investigation or facing criminal charges exceeds 200,000. Another 300,000 people have been subjected to summonses from the police and the Security Service of Ukraine, SBU, intimidation, threats, and so-called preventative conversations, home visits by security forces and pressure from armed nationalist groups. Penal colonies number 22 and 86. The Zelensky regime has created specific concentration camps to house political prisoners. Specifically, these are penal colony number 122 in Pyatikaki, uh, and penal colony number 86 in Vinnytsia. In these institutions, political prisoners are systematically deprived of their human dignity and fundamental rights. According to the prisoners, administrators and prison staff refer to them as despairingly as G-slur, a racist term that conveys a sense of total powerlessness. They are nobody, they have no rights, and anything can be done to them. WWP. Jeez, that's rough. Headlines from socialist countries. Champasak gears up to reopen Kon Pasoy and Tadfa. The provincial leadership of Champasak is stepping up efforts to put its tourism agenda into practice through collaborative talks with the private sector. Key initiatives include reopening renowned natural beauty spots, most notably the Kong Fasoi and Tadfa attractions, alongside elevating a major marathon to an international standard to revitalize the local economy and secure sustainable livelihoods for residents. Mr. Alunse Sunalath, party secretary of Champasak province, recently met with Mr. Inthi Juan Savan, president of the Lao Tourism Business Association. The discussion focused on reviewing 25 core indicators aimed at resolving outstanding tourism challenges, which have been formally endorsed by the Provincial People's Council as a priority provincial agenda. The primary objective is to fast-track stalled tourism developments projects so they can resume operations swiftly in alignment with sustainable green tourism guidelines. This public-private partnership marks a significant milestone in upgrading Champasak's tourism standards to attract both domestic and international holidaymakers, while actively working to alleviate local poverty. KPL. Prime Minister updates Cuban Parliament on the implementation of economic and social transformations. Addressed by Manuel Marrero Cruz, Prime Minister of the Republic of Cuba, at the 7th Ordinary Session of the National Assembly of People's Power in its 10th Legislature at the Conventional Palace, July 29, 2026, year of the centennial of Commander-in-Chief Fidel Castro Ruz. Army General Raul Castro Ruz, in his speech, at the closing of the 9th Congress of the Union of the Young Communists on April 4th, 2010, stated, "We face unpleasant realities, but we do not close our eyes to them. We are convinced that we must break with dogma, and we firmly and confidently embrace the ongoing updating of our economic model, with the aim of laying the foundations for the irreversibility and development of Cuban socialism. We reaffirm that we are not deviating from our socialist model. On the contrary, we will defend it and adopt the necessary measures for its consolidation. We are doing so without hesitation and are prepared to drive forward the profound process of economic and social transformation. We have ample reasons. Cuba's history, our leaders, our convictions, and our people." Grandma. Vietnam Association for Victims of Agent Orange Dioxin awarded second-class labor order. The Vietnam Association for Victims of Agent Orange/Dioxin, VAVA, was awarded the second-class labor order by the state president at a ceremony held in Hanoi on August 4th in recognition of its contributions to supporting victims of Agent Orange/dioxin and protecting their legitimate rights and interests. The event was organized to mark the 65th anniversary of the Agent Orange disaster in Vietnam, August 10th, 1961 to 2026, and in response to the Day for Victims of Agent Orange, August 10, VNA. Look at those photos. That's lovely. What a lovely tribute. You know? Incredible. Incredible to, honor the victims in this way and recognize, the org that's helping them. China targets 50% non-fossil power generation by 2030. China aims to raise the share of its electricity generated from non-fossil energy sources to 50% by 2030, according to a newly released national plan outlining the country's power sector development for the 2026 to 2030 period. The five-year plan, jointly issued by the National Development and Reform Commission and the National Energy Administration, sets out the overall roadmap for the country's power sector in the 2026 to 2030 period and targets the national establishment of a new power system by 2030. Under the plan, China aims to enable the high-level integration of more than 2.8 billion kilowatts of new energy capacity into the power grid and build a charging infrastructure network capable of supporting over 110 million electric vehicles by 2030. Wow. To achieve these goals, the plan outlines a range of priorities, including expanding green and low-carbon power supplies, building a more coordinated and resilient power grid, enhancing the power system's flexibility, improving electricity supply security, advancing market-oriented power sector reforms, and promoting international cooperation. The plan calls for balancing the development of renewable energy with grid integration, advancing conventional hydropower projects in a science-based manner, promoting the safe and orderly development of nuclear power, encouraging diversified development of non-fossil fuel energy sources, and improving the efficiency and carbon performance of coal-fired power generation. By 2030, China plans to increase installed conventional hydropower capacity to around 410 kilowatts, nuclear power capacity to about 110 million kilowatts, and combined installation capacity of biomass, solar thermal, geothermal, and ocean energy to roughly 65 million kilowatts. Earlier, official data showed that the coal-fired power had accounted for 49.7% of China's total electricity output in the first half of 2026, marking the first time its share had fallen below 50%, and a new milestone in the country's transition towards a green and low-carbon energy system. China has pledged to peak carbon dioxide emissions before 2030 and achieve carbon neutrality before 2060. CGTN. Incredible. Incredible. Developing countries aspire after self-supporting economic development. Developing countries are making positive efforts to oppose domination and subordination and achieve independent development of the economy. Mostly recently, the Mozambican president expressed the stand to concentrate all efforts on achieving the country's economic independence in the coming 25 years. Addressing an opening ceremony of the International Conference on Inclusive and Sustainable Development of Mozambique, He expressed his determination to achieve economic independence in the coming 25 years and make them a period of building a further growing, inclusive, and competitive state. After reviewing the course of development of the country between 2000 and 2025, he said that the main objective of the meeting was to establish a development strategy for the coming decades, adding that the national economy grows not by chance, but through adopting a view on its development prospects, building a system that can be fully trusted, and implementing a consistent policy. A Nigerian media outlet asserted that the advice of the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank on accepting the American-style recipe for the economy does not fit the reality of African countries, including Nigeria. It said that the advice, which urges the country to increase government taxes by hiking VAT, value-added tax on fuel and communication rate, seems highly unlikely to shrink the economic activities of its business and citizens by increasing their burden, as it does not take the reality of Nigeria into full consideration. Nigeria should not accept the American-style economic recipe blindly, but push ahead with an economic policy centering on the national industrial growth and expansion of production, it noted. Developing countries are also eager to establish independent economic foundations. The Kenyan government has recently announced a plan for developing the manufacturing industry on a preferential basis. The plan is aimed at supporting the manufacturing industry sector to increase its competitive edge by exploiting all the potentials so that it could spearhead the development of the national economy. It reportedly took account of the reality in which manufacturing industry sector accounts for only 7.3% of the country's GDP. Meanwhile, the Rwandan president said in a meeting that the country should accelerate the national development by making its own efforts. The main thing in the national development strategy is to rely on its own efforts, he stressed, calling on all citizens to make responsible efforts for the future of the country. Referring to the need to attain self-sufficiency in energy by making effective use of geothermal, hydroelectric power, and solar energy, the Indonesian president emphasized that his country should not rely on imported energy and that it wants to live independently and can do so. It has become the trend of the times to achieve economic growth by each country's own efforts, free from dependence on outside forces. Pyongyang Times. This is excellent news. Excellent news. It doesn't make them socialist, of course, off the bat, but it's a great first step. It's a great first step. You love to see a bit of Juche. And clearly, this author did. Love it. Namfo School Children's Palace inaugurated. The Namfo School Children's Palace was Namfo School Children's Palace, was built and inaugurated in the Sports Village area of Wado District in the DPRK. With the construction of the palace, with various rooms, including the Foreign Language Group Room, the Program Development Group Room, and the Accordion Group Room, and the comprehensive sports and cultural and welfare facilities, school children have been provided with an extracurricular education base capable of training them into talents with versatile knowledge and high cultural attainments. An inauguration ceremony in the Namfo School Children's Palace took place on the spot on August 2nd. Present there were also So Shang-Firol, Chief Secretary of the Namfo Municipal Committee of the Workers' Party of Korea, officials and builders in the municipality, teachers, staff in the palace, and school children. At the end of the ceremony, the participants went round various places of the palace. Rodong Sinmun. Kaifeng district displays vitality of party policy. Entities of new civilization were erected in Kaifeng district, and numberless people visited them. Then what do these teach us? The Kaifeng district leisure complex is crowded with visitors every day. Happy looks of people remind us of the world of ardent devotion of the respected comrade General Secretary Kim Jong-un, who made painstaking efforts to make the complex serve as a fertile land and a cradle for training the regional people to be proud masters capable of running modern industry on their own, and for identifying and training talented people by providing them with the latest science and nourishment of civilization without interruption. Spectacular were the cinema fully furnished, with all necessary conditions and neighborhood serving amenities. The three-storied library, in particular, made us keenly feel great transformation being made in the residents' cultured way of life. At the students' reading hall, students were engrossed in their study through up-to-date computers. A worker of the district foodstuffs factory, who was devoted to reading at the reading hall, was full of gratitude to the benevolence of the party, which provided such a wonderful library, saying that he visits there whenever naughty problems arise in work. Again, Radon Sigmund. And that's the Tankie Times. That's the Tankie Times. Follow TankTube. Thank you for watching.